The Oak Room in the historic Mansion House of Dublin City is the gathering place for an event marking the life of a very special Argentinian woman. Members of Focolare have come to remember and celebrate LIeta Betoño, one of the founding members of the movement in Ireland. Today, the book telling her story and the history of Focolare's first 30 years in the country is launched by the Lord Mayor of Dublin, who told those present that LIeta's life was pervaded with the Golden Rule.
It's to live the Golden Rule, treat others as you would have them treat you. So LIeta Betoño was a woman whose life was imbued with this rule. She adhered strictly to it. The book shows her constant warm response to people of every race and religion, and through it all a passionate love for the people of Ireland, and especially for this great city of Dublin, where she lived for over 30 years, bringing her warmth and strength to many. So as Lord Mayor of Dublin, I wish to acknowledge the foundation stones that she placed here in the city, upon which many civic initiatives have blossomed.
So those of us who knew LIeta will remember a person who radiated warmth and happiness. And indeed, everyone who met her will attest to her boundless energy and good humour. In fact, although christened Blanca, she was known to everyone in Ireland as LIeta, which is the Italian word for happy. LIeta was also, as we know, a deeply spiritual person, and yet extremely vivacious and full of fun.
She was also very instrumental in me marrying to Mary, my wife, and she brought us together. But again, in a not a romantic way that had no depth, but in a real LIeta way, which was, here's what you should do, go and do it now for God's sake, and stop wasting time.
We remember a person of integrity for whom there were no half measures, someone who could be quite fiery at times, very practical, and always on your side when you needed support or assistance.
At one particular time that really stands out in my memory, when Granny was trying to trace her birth mother, and she wasn't getting good response from the adoption board, very negative, and she was in bits. So I rang LIeta. LIeta arranged to meet Granny, took her back to Milltown, wasn't it Milltown?
Yeah.
Had her overnight and kept her and spoke to her.
Yeah.
And because at that stage Granny was very near a really, really dark place, but LIeta pulled her out of it and gave her back to me whole.
One of the first places where LIeta worked was at a busy solicitor's office in Dublin.
I remember I needed a secretary, and in the early 1980s, I think, and that LIeta was looking for a job. So I put two and two together, and LIeta began working with us. I remember that we were both in offices on the top floor of 11 Hume Street, and we got on very well as we worked together. My chief recollection of LIeta was her gentleness and also how hard she worked, always trying to get the work finished.
I remember LIeta as a very passionate person, someone who was full of good humour, loads of energy, and a person who always supported your talent and made you feel like you could be pushed a little bit more.
LIeta was always the person who brought me back to basics and said, you know, take it one moment at a time, take it one step at a time, and things will become clearer. So she was always that practical, simple approach person, and she always kind of guided me like a mother would to make the right decisions as a teenager.
My memory of her, very, very vivacious, very focused person, and very good listener. I mean, you really felt in her presence that she was completely focused on just the present moment and really was listening very carefully.
Before she came to Ireland, LIeta had made this radical choice, the choice of God. In coming to Ireland from Argentina, she made another radical choice, and they were the right choices. She did not go back on either of them. Because of these radical choices, many people have received blessings through LIeta.
I was struck by the redolence of the family life that she lived and the determination she had as a teenager to set out on life's journey. And travelled with that sense of adventure and didn't just travel a known path. She left a trail behind her.
She was a remarkable woman, there's no doubt about it, who gave her life to God and to the Focolare, gave her life to Ireland and the people of Ireland, and was buried in Ireland.
LIeta is testified that real happiness comes by following the plan of love that God has for each person, and that this is really for our ultimate good.
She made the family. She was the type of person who always created a family atmosphere when we were together, when everybody, no matter who she met. And I lived with LIeta for a few years in Focolare, and I remember when LIeta was dying, I spent one night with her in the hospital, just I think the night before she died. And she sat on the bed and she said to me, "Tell me about everybody," because she knew my whole family, and she'd tell me about each one. And when I was telling her, I told her a particular experience about somebody in the family, and she'd always remember, and it stayed with me to this day. It's not what you want for somebody, it's what God wants for that person.
And she also shows the way to find true happiness, this joy that she really embodied, is through relationships with people. And I'm going to just end with a quote from her, something that she said just a month before she died. She said, "Every meeting with each person is sacred. It is true that it is that one moment which is never repeated."
We don't say goodbye now, 'cause we'll meet again. Pilgrims together in a world without end. In heaven forever, with all of her friends. With Mary our mother, we live without end. Now you have arrived where the sun will shine forever. The light of your faith, the flame in your heart. You have arrived. You have arrived.